All right, so now what we need to do is to show this dialog. But right before I do that, I just need to show you that because somebody pointed out that I left a return statement, which I did here, right? We are supposed, because if we don't have this early return here, you're going to see that regardless of this check, the form is still being submitted. So let me show you what I mean. If I was to put an alert here and say form submitted, right? And we're going to put maybe like an invalid email. So here I could just come in here and do like this, right? Now look at that, form submitted, even though it's still going to show the error message. So this is wrong. So how do we avoid that? Well, we can avoid that by ensuring that we use this early return so that the code doesn't continue to execute the next one, right? So let's try that one more time. Now you can see that nothing, the alert is not being shown, right? So, okay, good. So how exactly do we get to show this dialog, right? That's the question. So what I'm going to do is to create a component called dialog here. We're going to come in here and I'll just name it dialog, really. Like I said, I'm really bad with naming components and stuff. So here, and I'll just move it to the left side here. And RAFC, we're going to quickly create that. Perfect. So this dialog, because of the desktop here, you know, there's a background here that's covering everything behind. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to have that as the main background. And then this card itself is going to be the dialog. And then inside the dialog, we're going to have maybe a div that's covering this part, and then then the button, right? So let's have that, and then maybe a button here. Okay, perfect. So what are we going to do with that information? So we know that inside the first part, we're going to have an image, and then here we're going to have that probably an H2. Oops. My keyboard letter H is not working well. So, all right. So thanks for subscribing. Thanks for subscribing. I think that's with an exclamation point. All right, perfect. And then right after that, we have this paragraph. And let's see, because I'm going to need to copy that. All right, so I'm going to come in here. And actually, this part is going to be an email. We're going to need to receive that. And I'm just going to use strong tags in here. And we're going to pass whatever email that we need to pass. And what else do we need from here? Right, the button. Good. And we're going to have the button that says dismiss message. And I'm already noticing something here, actually, with this button. But let me just finish and show you. Dismiss button. Wait, dismiss message. Jeez. All right. I'm thinking about the button message. That's fine. Okay. You notice that the button is practically the same, right? Same styling, same hover state. So yeah, we might actually need to create this as a reusable component, right? That's the whole idea of React. So, okay, we'll get into that. For now, let's focus on making sure that we can at least render this dialog. Okay, I think that's the whole content I need in here, right? So let's get started with this part first. So, okay, I'm only going to address this part, then I'll come back to the mobile. Okay, I'm going to be doing both at the same time. So this one, we're going to need to say width full and let it take the full height, which is going to be screen. And then we're going to give it a background color. Oh, I keep writing BG. Background color here, it's going to be, I think that's 700, right? Yeah. Blue, not neutral, blue, 700. Okay. And because everything is at the center, right? So we're going to need to center this. And remember that we've written this CSS here, flex, item, center, justify. content center. We've written that already here. If you remember, we have it right here. So what I'm going to do is go inside our global CSS here, and I'm just going to say common classes. Like I said, I'm really bad with naming things. So here I'm going to give this, I'm going to call this class center and display. Is going to be flags, and then align items center, justify content center also, right? In this class, I'm going to take it, and then I'm just going to delete all of this, right? And whenever I have custom classes, I like to put them at the start here. It's just a preference, really. There's no hard rule to that. So that's the same thing here. I'm going to delete this so we can just reuse that class instead of rewriting it. And I'm pretty sure we're going to be using it for the buttons also. So that's center. Okay, perfect. We have that. Okay, so that we now have the dialog in here, right? How do we actually get to render it inside our newsletter card in here? So at what point do we need to show this dialog? Well, right after we've made these two checks here, right? This is where we need to submit the form, right? Submit the form. So what that actually means is we are now saying we now need to set show dialog to true, right? So that it can actually show. So set show dialog to true. Okay, we have that. And we can come in here. I've added this React fragment right here. So I could come down here and say, or maybe we could actually conditionally render these two, right? Because this is the only two things we have. So we could conditionally say show dialog. If it is true, then we're going to render the dialog, right? Otherwise, we'll just render this this initial card. So I'll move that in here. Okay, let me just save and show you one more time what's happening here. So we have this state called show dialog, which we are only setting into true after we've made sure that these checks have been passed, right? So we conditionally render these two, which is our card and the dialog itself. So right now, let's try and interact with okay, so let's submit the form here. Look at that. How come we can't see anything here besides the background color that we've given? Well, that's because Dialog has some native styling that it already comes with. So for example, you would need to make use of open right here so you can start to see things. There it is. But then again, another problem is it's left aligned, as you can see, but it's supposed to be at the center, right? So we can get rid of that by making use of the margin or the inline margins using auto so that it gets centered, right? And it comes in here. All right, so it looks like we are almost close. Now let's apply some styling, but I'm going to first focus on the mobile because we want it to take the full height, as you can see here, right? So what that would mean is I'll give it a height, say full. Okay, it does that. And then maybe a padding top that is a bit big, maybe like 25. Okay. And then I will say flex column, and I'll say justify between so that we can space things so that this button can be at the bottom, right? As you can see here, and I'll apply maybe some padding bottom so that it's not right at the edge. I'll give it maybe like a 10. Okay, very good. And now this button, if you remember, we have the same type of button here. It's almost similar, the things that we're going to write, and we don't want to repeat that, right? So what I'm going to do is to create also another component. Now, I know this is an overkill for such a small project here, but the whole idea is to actually get to practice so that when you start dealing with a much larger project, you know your things, you can create reusable components, right? So I'm going to just copy this button here, right here, and I'm going to paste it right here. So what are some of the props, or what are some of the things that it needs? Well, definitely it's going to need the text, the one that we can put here. Now, since we only have two here, all right, so we have the text, okay. And then we're going to need the type, which, because you see, like we have the type submit, But when we are in the dialog, we're going to need a type of button. So what I'm going to do is by default, I'm just going to say this is the default is a type button, so that if we need to pass a submit, we use that. All right. And then another thing that I'm going to need is a handler, right? Because remember, we're going to be dismissing, we're just closing the dialog, or we're going to be submitting the form, right? In here, you can see, because it's a type submit, automatically rendered inside a form, it's going to deal with this, right? So what I will do now is to replace this and use text, and then type is going to be type here, and the handler is going to be onClick equals handler. Now this is the downside of JavaScript, because if it was TypeScript, I could at least create some of these props as optional. But this is why I also maybe use the default here, right? So that we don't have any runtime errors. Okay, so let's come back to our dialog here, right? So what I would do is to call that button. Matter of fact, I'm going to put this inside a div because I'm going to need to give it space, right? And I'll just call button here, right? And maybe this one, let it take the full width and margin top. Oh, not margin top, but yeah, margin top. Okay, I'm going to give it a margin top of 6, something like that. And then we know it needs the props, like type is going to be, for this one, it's just going to be button. Actually, this doesn't need, right? Because remember, it's the default, so we can get rid of that. We can just pass down, what can we pass here? Text. What did the text say? I already forgot. For this one, it says dismiss message. Uh-oh, okay, we don't need this one. And the other prop that we're going to need to pass is the handler, and we don't have that in here, which is for us to be able to close this dialog, right? This button. So what I would do is I would just create, maybe down here, constant handle dialog. So yeah. And in here, I can just set show dialog to false. We're going to be talking about other things that we can also pass to this dialog when we close it. So, well, there's going to be a bit of prop drilling, right? Because it needs to go into, not necessarily, yeah, it's going to go one level here. So handler equals handle change. And then, so inside our dialog, because remember, we are passing it to the dialog, right? So here, I'm going to just destructure handler, and then I'll pass it down here as handler. So the prop drilling is only one level, so I think that's still manageable. You'd think of context if it was a lot of levels. All right, since we now have that in place, I'm also just going to refactor our form in here, so we can use this this button. Okay, so what do I need? So I'll put it. Let's see, what was in this button? Did it have any margin top or anything like that? So I can see if I need to, yeah, it had a margin top of 6 here. So I'll just wrap it inside a div. Oh my. Okay, and I'll call button, and text is going to be this. And what else do we need? Type is going to be submit. I might have kept the time and just remove it. This handle on submit. Yeah, I could have actually done that. All right, anyways, handle submit. That'll be the handler here. Yeah, I'm just realizing that. Since, I mean, I could have just went with type button only and no need for the submit, since I'm still passing down the handler. All right, just for this one, it's going to take width full and margin top 6. All right, let's see if this button needs something. That's it. Okay. All right, so, all right. Yeah, and the button is is down here. All right, so let's apply some styling to this because this is what we basically have at the moment. Okay, so we're gonna need some padding to the dialog here. PX, I'll just give it maybe 6. Yeah, left, right. I mean, of course, if you want it to be very specific, you're gonna come in here and measure it. For now, I am just going to estimate. Okay, actually it seems like, all right, then the title. I'll give it maybe text for Excel. Yeah, font bold. I actually realized that all our H1 and H2s, they have the same thing, so I might really not need to keep repeating that. I don't know if we have an H3, but yeah, so I'm going to give them a font weight of what they use, 700. And then the color, the dark one. Yeah, exactly. So that color has been applied. Let's see the paragraph. Our paragraphs also, they're using the same thing. Font weight of 400 according to the style guide that they gave us. And then the colors is going to be 700. Yeah, if you want, you can add a line height of maybe 1.5 if you want. But yeah, so now here in the dialog, I'm just going to remove this and give a margin top. I'll say 6. Yeah. Oh, sorry, I shouldn't have removed the text for Excel here. The font size is different, right? And then there is a space here. Yeah, I'll give it 4. Margin top 4. Yeah. Okay, I think that's all in here, right? Now let's switch to iPad. See how that looks. Or the tablet. All right. Okay, this is what we have. I hate that it does that every time it re-renders. Okay, how about our desktop? Okay, so this is what we have right here now. We're going to need some sort of a dialog. I mean, a box like this. This is what we want, so we can achieve that. Let's give, I'm going to remove this class and put it somewhere else. Somewhere there, margins and, right. So this height of full, no, you're going to need to say when we get to large, height is just going to fit, right? That's what we have, but we need to have a maximum width, right? So I would say once we get to, again, if we're going to use the large ones, but we could do that a bit early, but yeah, I'll put this on and say maximum width equals small. That could be really small. Yeah. What do they have here? Because I'm not so sure. So let's measure here. Oh, about 500. Yeah, that's pretty small. So maybe medium. Almost. So the text now. Yeah, I think I can deal with that one. And let's give it also rounded, which is the border radius 2XL. Okay, and then we need to reduce this padding here. So we have padding 25, but as soon as we get to large, I'm just going to say padding top because I think the same as the bottom, which is 10. So I'll say 10. Okay, and these ones, increase that because I think this is using like 60 something. So PX, as soon as we get to large, that's going to be maybe 12, 48, 15. Okay, maybe we can work with that. So this is really according to your preference, the way you think it looks better. You can adjust. But basically, this is the whole functionality. Dismiss message. And now, did you see something here? As soon as I dismiss, the email is still here, and that can be confusing to the user. wouldn't it be nice that we clear everything here? So what we can do, because the button that we're clicking is this one, the handler here, which is handle dialog. So in here, we can say set email. This is basically like a reset to empty, right? We can also maybe clear any error messages, right? Just resetting. So let's try and submit. Yep. Oh, and another thing, there's supposed to be an email here, right? We need to pass the email. So dialog is going to receive email, and we're going to destructure it here, and we're going to pass it right here. Yeah. Yeah, so now we have that. And when we close, it's gone. Okay, so this was basically the project, right? And I know I probably did a lot of unnecessary things, but at least this is how I would have done it. So I would love to know how I can improve this solution. What would you do differently? What did you like? What didn't you like? And if you found any of this useful at all, don't forget to subscribe, because that would motivate me to create more and learn. All right. Thanks for watching.